What's up folks, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we'll talk about my current iteration of the Dracotail Branded deck that I've been running and reiterating for the last few weeks since the YCS Dortmund, since the 300th YCS basically. And I know my next video should have been on the YCS experience and how I did there and whatnot, which I will still do, but I want to put some more effort into that video, script it a little bit more because it's also supposed to be basically like a little bit of a motivation and eye-opener on why you should try to attend such big events if the opportunity arises, which I know it's not feasible for everybody, especially depending on where you live. The YCS might not even happen in your own country or not nearby enough. Job, family, there's a lot of things that can get in the way, but should the opportunity be there, I think it's a must do for anybody that loves the game and likes to experience the game, because it's basically like a huge celebration. It's a cool event. The same is true for Nets and whatnot, and I know a lot of people are afraid of actually going to such huge events because they think they're not good enough for such events and whatnot, but I think there's a lot of fun to have, even if you're not the day 2 performer, top 8 player or whatsoever. But as I said, I want to put more time into that video, some more editing, and that means that in this video we'll just go over the Dracotail list, talk about some tech options that I've been trying out and that I'm currently playing, cards that I'm not playing and why not and whatnot. So I've been having some good success with this list. The main deck didn't change much in the last 2-3 weeks. I've won locals multiple times with this. I think the worst I did was X1 in 2 locals. So that's been good. I have a OTS championship coming up next week, though I know there will be tough competition, so we'll see how I'll do then. Maybe I'll even attend 2 local OTS championships, because there's one in my city and then one nearby on the Sunday afterwards, so we'll see. Anyways, too much yapping, let's get into the list. As always, we'll start over the main deck, and of course here we'll start with the Dracotail engine. For our starters here for this engine, we're playing of course the triple Lucias. This is often our standard normal summon that we go through, paired with 3 5-mana, which allows us to fuse due to its quick effect, and then of course the quote-unquote newly limited Mululu. It's been quite a while already by now. Then we're running 1 Frixel, triple Urgula, 1 Pan, also limited Ketu, otherwise we would run 3 copies of it for sure. Then 3 Rahu and 1 of each of the traps. And let me say something about the ratios real quick. I think Urgula makes a lot of sense to run at 3. It's very good in the mirror match, where you want to pop especially the Flame if you have access right end of main. You just go 5-mana effect, pop 1 of their back row, which usually, even if you're not playing against Dracotail, against Radiant Typhoon that is good, right? Against Sky Striker that is good, and especially post siding that's good against pretty much every deck. Though going second, I usually side out 1 copy, but it is still a very potent card. Of course, fusing away Pan or fusing away Mululu with 5 mana is also very powerful, right? Permanently negating a monster or just outright destroying it is very good. But often, especially post-siding, the toxic cards are in the floodgates that are set in the back row. And getting rid of those is very good. Or if you're playing against matchups like Mitsurugi, where they set the Great Purification against Orchrist or Orchrist Mitsu, where they have the Crescendo, cards that just completely stop you from playing, then having such a card or such an opportunity with Urgula to get rid of that card preemptively is very good. Because otherwise you might have some trouble playing into the board, right? Especially if you couldn't hold them back a little bit with non-engine to make them only build a half board. Then we have the Fallen or Branded engine, which gives a huge boost to this deck ceiling. Of course, we're running 2 copies of the Fallen and the White Dragon, and 1 copy of the OG Albaz. Then we have 1 copy of the Incredible Ecclesia, 2 copies of Cartesia, 1 Shrouded Dragon, 2 Branded Fusion, and only 2 Fallen the Virtues. I think this card especially is played at every ratio right now. Some people play it at 1, some people play it at 3. I used to play it at 3 as well before we got the Fallen support. This is a very good card, Fallen the Virtuous. It's very good at playing into boards, especially in the mirror match and into Radiant Typhoon, because it can help you deal with the Radiant Typhoon trap, which makes MST negate, right? You can, for example, you go Branded Fusion, Rahu, Ketu, whatever. You start with those, they chain the MST, then chain the trap in order to negate, and then you chain the Fallen of the Virtuous in order to pop the trap, which then means they don't negate, they lost one interaction, and you get graveyard set up through this, which is very good, right? Because then you can get access to Branded Fusion, you can get a second copy, you can get access to Albaz. There's a lot of ways you can play with this. Shrouded Dragon is really just the fake 40th card. It basically turns this deck into a 39 card deck, which makes more sense to do if you're playing breakers rather than just pure hand traps, because this is a bad draw with hand traps, right? But if you play breakers in your deck, then it makes more sense, which kind of gives you a hint already at how the non-engine looks like. This card is very nice though as well, because it not only replaces itself and gives you a draw, it also mills, and usually that will be the Fallen of the White Dragon, especially if we don't draw access to this or Branded Fusion. And even if we have access to Branded Fusion, this might be the way to get both of the Albazes into the graveyard turn 0. The cool thing that this does is it also turns like the Cartesia to special summon, which is very neat, because then you can protect your normal summon Lucius, for example, for the search to dodge Imprimer Veiler, or you can later turn these two into the Ecclesia Synchro, Ecclesia and the Black Dragon, because this is a level 4 tuner and this is a level 4 non-tuner, right? So you can just build that generic level 8, which comes up way more than you think. Also, if you start with Cartesia, you fuse into Secretarian, Secretarian revives Lucius, Lucius searches, and then you can turn these into the Synchro to get access to the Albaz engine. So there's a lot of ways to get to this card. Of course, you have the Albaz itself, the Ecclesia, but also Cartesia, Shrouded, and Branded Fusion all mean access to that card, because also Branded Fusion dumps this rather than the OG Albaz, and then with Athalion you can bounce this back and get access to it, right? So that's quite neat. For the non-engine, we're running one card that I have to give a big shout out to Jordan Gallagher, because he kind of put it on the map for this deck, I think. That is the Forbidden Droplet. At the 300th YCS, I think I ran it in the sided 2 copies, but I definitely didn't main it, and that card makes a huge difference. It plays very nicely right now. In the mirror match, this card is so good. Same as Fallen the Virtues, it allows you to dodge Flame. It's also very good into Radiant Typhoon, because you can send whatever card they want to negate with the trap, and then you negate the Link 2 or the Monster Negate or the Bounce, right? Whatever they have on the board, which you think is more impactful for you right now or more detrimental for your own success, you just negate that, right? And that is super neat. Yeah, and then of course we still have to run some cards that are not breakers. That just makes sense to run. Of course, Fuva, this is basically the best non-engine in the game right now, next to Fallen of the Virtues and Droplet. Opala. I nearly crashed my cards. And then Tripod Flu. We're running Triple Ash, because we don't like Fuva either. Especially if you start with the Fallen engine, then you would have to give them a ton of draws in order to play, because Albaz summons out Ecclesia, they turn into the Synchro, and then you summon out Cartesia, right? That's 3 draws from deck or extra deck, which is a no-go. If you start, of course, with the Dracotail engine, you can play around that a little bit better, because you can theoretically sometimes just give them 1 draw and set up all 3 traps. And you can also, then if you have access to it, just special the Fallen. Don't use its effect, and just get the graveyard set up to get access to the Fallen and the Virtues. And then lastly, for the 40th card, we have 1 copy of Nip. Nip is always better than you think, because decks can play around Nip well, so people don't play around Nip because nobody plays Nip, and then people start playing Nip. And it's kind of like a circular thing that people, of course, start playing around Nip again. Then Nip is not as good, but it's always the thing. In theory, it's not that good. In practice, in tournaments, it always turns out way better than it should, because people always play into it. And of course, you also don't always play your ideal combo, because you get interacted with, right? And then this card is very good. Also, it is a very good draw off of Fuva, which people sometimes take the Fuva challenge, because even this deck has limited pushes at some point, right? If you set up an basically unbreakable board with a ton of negates, then all of a sudden let's say you have Crescendo and you have the Mitsu Trap, right? And all of a sudden, you would have a really tough time, and people are like, I can play into Fuva, doesn't matter, because my opponent will just not break my board anyways. But all of a sudden you have Nib, and half that board is gone then. Suddenly it looks very good. That's it for the main deck. If you have any questions about ratios or card choices, let me know in the comments, but let's get into the extra. The extra deck is giga tight now. There's so many good options, so many good options we can't play. And I'll talk about some in a second, but what we'll start with is Triple Athalion, which is not necessarily standard right now anymore. There's a lot of topping lists now playing 2, but I'll talk about that in just a second. Then we're running 1 Gulamel, 1 Shaoless, a card that a lot of people didn't have faith in. Same goes for me. At the 300 YCS I didn't play it. Now I do play it, and this card is performing way better than expected. There's a lot of situations where it comes in clutch, and it does very well. This is especially true in the mirror match when your opponent has Secretarian on the board. You activate Rahu or Ketu, whatever, right, to fuse away, and you fuse away a Pan or Malulu in order to pop or negate the Secretarian. Going to an Athalion doesn't do anything because it can't activate its effect. Gulamel is also not that great because it still can't activate its effect until you activate another Dracotail card, and they can just chain to it. But the Shaoless means they need to deal with it right away, because you can just, on the resolution, if they don't have a quick effect, use its effect and then just get rid of another board piece, which is super good, right? So that is quite nice. And it also comes up very often that you can recycle cards with it, especially if your traps get negated. On the next turn, you summon Shaoless, shuffle some of them back, and you're cooking. Then we're playing a singular copy of Secretarium. This card is integral to the gameplay of this deck. You often sets up turn 1 just for your combos, but it's because it's a good extender, but it's also, of course, a floodgate in the mirror match, which makes things a little bit more complicated. I don't think it's crazy in the mirror match because there's too many ways to out it. It loses to Fallen Virtues, you can fuse away Malulu, Pan, so Ketu and Rahu. If you can't ash it, just completely deal with this card right away, but it's still very much necessary. Then 1 generic quote-unquote dragon fusion as well is the Chaos Star Source Dragon. This card is amazing and a 100% must play if you play the Branded engine, because this card is way too good, and it comes up pretty much every match. There's so many ways you can fuse into this, and it does really well. Then for the Branded cards, we're playing 1 Sanctifier, which you usually summon off sending the Fallen of the White Dragon and the Frixel. Then 1 copy of Mirror Jade, the ultimate boss monster. I know before some people cut it, which I never did, and now everybody's playing it again because it's too good in many matchups, right? Against Yami it's very good, against VS K9 it's goated. This card is very tough to deal with for them, especially the VS tag out effects. they can be really tough, right? So also on Lupus effect to XZ to chain Mirror Jade, it is really tough. Like, it checks those effects, those type of effects really well, and this card is just way too good. And then we're playing 1 Rebellion, the Searing Dragon, 1 Albion, the Branded Dragon, and 1 Dragon that Devours. This is the card that you usually send the Albion, the Branded Dragon, with the Fallen of the White, or the Fallen the Virtuous. Then we're playing 1 Titaniclad, which is our Ligadance out, but it also allows us to send Pan for Branded Fusion, though the usual suspect to send other dragons is actually Abelonatus. This card, of course, is very good when you can contact fuse away dragon boards, or even when your opponent plays Dracotail Branded. If they leave the Albaz on board, you can fuse away half that board, which is very good. You turn all of their bodies into your body, right? That's quite neat, but you can also use Branded Fusion to send, for example, Urgula, which is very good in some matchups, right? To create a disruption with the Urgula, or a pop of a back row, which you can't do with other targets, right? Because Urgula is a dragon. That works. That's what you need. And then, of course, the final card is the Ecclesia and the Black Dragon. This is a very good summon, of course, and there's multiple ways to access it. The standard line, of course, is starting with one of the White Dragon or Ecclesia, and then summoning out the other, and then going into the Synchro 8. But as I said before, you can also go into this very easily when you start with Cartesia, when you get access to Lucius and the Dragon, because then you can turn those into Secretarian. Secretarian can summon back Lucius, it searches, then you can Synchro into this card, which gives you access to the Albaz engine, which is quite neat. So as I said before, the Athalion at 3 isn't very standard anymore. It's very much debated. A lot of people are cutting it down. And there's a lot of different options you can play. Also, Titaniclad is not in every list anymore. It only makes sense to really run if you also run Shrouded or Nib in the main, or even both, because only then it can get big enough to run over Lygadancer. I think it makes sense to run Nib or Shrouded or even both, which I am playing both in the deck, so then this card makes a lot of sense. It's also good send, because in the end phase you can summon out the OG Albaz, which fuses away their board, which is quite neat. Or if you play into a board, you can also send the special summon the Fawn of the White, and then special out the Ecclesia, which on the next turn the main phase can summon out OG Albaz to fuse, right? So that is actually quite good. There's a lot of different options you can play though. The second Secretarian makes a whole lot of sense, right? Rindbrum is also a very good card, and also Mysterion is a decent choice. Against Vanquished K9 it can be very good. Against Yami it can also be good, though they can ideally play around it with the Snatch effect, because the target needs to stay on field. Radiant Typhoon, not really that good, right? But there's a lot of situations. Against Malice, Mysterion is very good because you force the banish effects, and then you can out them afterwards, or your opponent can summon them back. Or if they've already been banished after using their effect, you can just completely get rid of the board. So that's quite good. But I'm quite happy with this. I'm just debating whether I should exchange the third Athalion for Rindbrum. That is the only option I really consider, because I like the Titaniclad actually quite a lot, so I would not like to cut it. But these are basically your 3 main options. There's also different versions you can play if you change the main deck. One card that is quite sexy to play, I have to call it that way, is actually Exeter Knight. You can increase the copies of Ecclesia you're running, at least post-side, because you can then turn your Ecclesia into the Fawn of the White. Fawn of the White summons are back. Didn't lock you, so you can just go into Exeter Knight and then wipe the board. Which is very good if your opponent isn't paying attention, but I think the main thing for me would be either Mysterion or Rindbrum, and for me I think I might try this out. Though if you have to start with Fawn of the White Dragon, you cycle through your Athalions quite fast because you're locked into level 8 from the extra decks, Synchros and Fusions. And you can summon Gulamel and Showless, but you often need to fuse 2 times, and that's already 2 Athalions out, right? And if you only run 2, then you can't Athalion on the opponent's turn, and that is quite iffy. That's it for the extra. Let's talk about the side deck real quick. Alright, for the side deck, 1 card, or 2 cards basically, that should be in every side deck, of course. The Perulia, very good in a ton of matchups against Yami, VS K9, against Radiant Typhoon. This card is very good, can potentially generate a ton of draws. It's fine against Mitsu. Usually it's at least an upstart Goblin. At the same time, it is not very impactful in some matchups. I think Fuva just has the broader matchup spread, so I think it makes sense to play this in the side, because often enough you will then draw it for turn in your game 1, right? And then it's kind of iffy. Same if you with Fuva, right? So if you play too many Charmies, that can also be bad. I think Dracotail is the deck that can still play the most Charmies while getting away with it, because theoretically you can fuse them away, but they're very iffy fusion targets, right? Or fusion materials rather. Then we're playing 2 copies of Droll. This is against a lot of decks still, Exodia, so play it. There's no way around it. We do side into more hand traps depending on the matchup as well. 2 more Nibs. The Rock, as I said in the main deck section, is still a very good card. People don't play around it enough, then it's very good. Maybe in a few weeks you should take it out because people start playing around Nib, but some decks also can play around Nib very well. Yami could, but a lot of people either don't have the hands for it or don't utilize the lines properly, and then all of a sudden they get punished. Vanquished K9, if they don't open K9 cards, often people overextend and then you can punish them with Nib. So there's very good ways to actually utilize that card. One more card is the Infinite Impermanence, and this card is very good right now. Targeting Negate actually is kind of back into the game. I'm playing this over Mourner and Veiler, which are theoretically better against the Radiant Typhoon deck, especially Mourner, because it can hit the Crosshair in the draw phase. which Imperm can as well, but since you're in control of a spell trap, they can pop it with their own Fawn of the Virtues, which they can't if you use Morna, right? And Vale, of course, can play in the draw phase, only in the main phase. The reason for Imperm is that it's way better into the Canine decks. If you stop the Noroi, the normal summon, it is a whole lot better. Also, against Vanquish Soul Canine, even hitting just the Vanquish Soul card. If they have Izuna in hand, you Imperm the Raisin and they don't have a way to dodge or extend. That's very good. If you Veiler the Raisin and then they have Izuna into Lupus into Ripper, the whole combo starts, right? And they can extend like hell and build a fat board, which I can't do if you start with Imperm. Also, this is decent in the mirror match, though I don't side it in, because Imperming or Veilering the Lucius and the Athalion is very potent, though I think the other options that we have are better in the mirror. Then we're playing 2 more breaker cards. One card that has come back for the deck is the Pankratops, and this card is very good to out Dimensional Fissure, which you'll see some people playing, though I think there's less Di-Fi running around. You will see it especially in Radiant Typhoon, Mitsu, and in the K9 VS matchup. They can all play Dimensional Fissure and not really suffer from it, especially compared to us, who will lose to that card, right? Same is true for Shifter, even though sometimes you can still grind it out if their hand isn't strong. But this card outs Di-Fi, which is very good, and it plays around the MST negate, which is very nice, so you can do that. Also decent into Yummy sometimes, because they can't book it and whatnot, so it's good. But the Herald is gone, so I wouldn't side this into Yummy. Then we have the Feather Duster, same function, but it's better. The only problem with it is that, of course, it is not a monster. But if you pair this in Dracotail matchup with Fawn of the Virtues or Droplet, the whole back row is gone, right? Very good. Same with the Radiant Typhoon matchup. They just can't play around it. So if you compare this with the Fawn of the Virtues or the Droplet, this card is insanely good into those matchups. Same with Sky Striker. You don't need the back row, buddy. Trust me. Then for going first cards, we're playing 3 Charmies, so we need to be able to side them out. We're playing double Fenrir and 1 Caught by the Grave. This has just recently, like literally the last 1 or 2 weeks, popped up again. Jesse Cotton played this with his second place finish at YCS Sydney, and the reason it makes a lot of sense because at the 300th YCS I ran Dragon's Mind in the side deck and Solemn Judgment, which I didn't like whatsoever. In theory, both are insanely good cards, and especially Dragon's Mind, you can keep resetting and resetting and resetting. The problem, though, is if you don't end on a fusion because you get interrupted, Dragon's Mind isn't alive, and then you just look kind of stupid with that card set. And Solemn Judgment, if that is your only interruption, even Radiant Typhoon will kill you, right? They just summon out their bodies, and they're not good at OTKing, but if you have 4,000 life points and no monsters, then all of a sudden they're very good at OTKing. So Fenrir is a lot better in that regard for me because it plays by itself and it's quite obnoxious card. Called by, of course, is basically Exodia as well, right? It's the same group of cards as Stroll. It is busted. So I enjoyed it quite a lot. These are the side deck cards. Maybe in the future I will also go deeper into side deck patterns, but I think I've yapped quite a ton. So I'll break this video up in 2 parts, where the gameplay aspects, which I want to show off, will be in the next video. And yeah, let's finish this one off. Alright, and this already concludes the deck profile video. There will be a follow-up video probably uploaded on the next day because I'll record them back to back on some gameplay aspects you should consider or you should be aware of. Some interactions that will come up with your own combos, also playing into boards. So I'll talk about that a little bit, but as always, for this video, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for the deck profile and also suggestions, things that I should try out, maybe some tech options that aren't played currently but should be worth considering, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely check them out over the OTS Championship that I will be attending, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.